everyone, it's Ileana and I have a card to share with you today. I'm going to be starting with this Tailored Expressions stencil. It's called Just Keep Swimming. And I'm using my Memory Misty mouse pad because you can wipe it off. And I have sprayed my stencil with some pixie spray. Now I went to go try to find some glitter paste and I found that pretty much all of them had dried up. So I took the clear one from Bo Bunny and I don't think it's available anymore, but you can use any one that's the clear or the white. And then I just added some Distress ink reinker and I used mustard seed. So I'm just going to blend it all in and it works just fine. So if you don't feel like buying a whole bunch of different glitter paste, you can always just try to make your own at least. Just try to remember the number of drops that you put in your mix. I'm just going to be spreading it with a palette knife, and I made just enough that I didn't really have any left over. I'm just going to spread around until I get an even coat. I did this once and didn't realize that the camera wasn't rolling, so I actually had to do this a second time. So I'm just going to wipe everything down with a baby wipe, and you want to do that right away or else it will dry. So you want to go clean your stencil right away. So the next part of my card, I'm going to be using a stamp set also from Tailored Expressions. I think it's called Hook, Line, no, it's not Hook, Line, and Sinker. I think it is a Really Great. And I'm just going to be mounting it onto my MISTI, and then what I'll do is I'll use my sticky mat down at the bottom. I've secured it with a couple of magnets. Now what I should have done was I should have used my cottontail brush before I put it onto my sticky mat, but I didn't think of it. So now I'm just going to ink up the stamp, and I'm going to use VersaFine Clair. It's a little bit of a sticky ink, and so it'll stay wet long enough until I add my embossing powder to it. So I'm just going to stamp it a couple of times. And then I'm going to peel it off my sticky mat. So I'm just going to set it aside. And at first I think I'm going to just stencil right on it, but then I realize that I have to emboss first. So I'm going to peel it right off, and then I'm going to add my embossing powder. And I love the Brutus Monroe, the icicle, and so I just have it in this OXO container just so that it's easy to pour over cards. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and use my heat gun, and I'm just going to melt the embossing powder. I am using craft cardstock, so in order for the ink blending to not be absorbed into the paper, I'm going to be using Distress Oxides. And I did, I believe I totally messed up and I ended up using the wrong color, and then I had to go back and add the right color, but it's okay because with Distress Oxides you can layer the colors. So I'm going to be using, I think at first I decided that I'm going to use this pineapple from Tailored Expressions, and then I realized that it's not going to work. So that's when I switch over to the Distress Oxides. And this is where I had to go back, and I ended up using the orange, the carved pumpkin. So I ended up changing colors, and I'm only going to be doing the fish that are the entire fish, none of the partial. So I'm going to take this small blender brush, it's from Rabbit Hole Designs, and I'm going to just go around the edges and kind of give some dimension to the fish. And I'm using the festive berries to do that, just so that the fish look a little more dimensional. And I'm just going to blend around the edges, and this little brush is just perfect to do that. Now I'm going to wipe my stencil down before I remove it, that way I don't make a mess on my desk. And then I'm going to add the next layer. I did use my sticky mat to do all my blending. It does hold the stencil in place and your cardstock. Now I'm adding the mustard seed to the face and tail of the fish. And for the final layer, I'm going to be using peacock feathers. I am using the ink stand and I do really like it a lot. Once again, I'm going to wipe my stencil, and then I'm just going to die cut these out. I'm going to carefully pull this up, and I try to put your backer sheet back onto your sticky mats. That way it stays sticky longer. Now I'm going to take the coordinating dies and I'm going to die cut all of these little fish. Now my background is totally dry, and I'm going to add some more of the peacock feathers to the background, and I'm just going to blend it from the middle out. And I'm just going to keep adding color until I like the dimension, and it will rub off the fish. It won't stain your fish. You just have to take a microfiber towel and just wipe it down. So now I've gone all the way around. I didn't go all the way to the edges because I wanted it to look like a swirl. And now I'm going to use a microfiber towel to clean off the fish. So I got this little sprayer from IKEA, and it's supposed to be a mister for your plants, but it actually does do really nice droplets. It does different size droplets, so I really liked it. So I just sprayed it onto my card, and then I let it sit for a little bit, and then I used that same microfiber towel and I picked up the drops so that it gave it a little dimension. I did cut out this little bitty rectangle with this Tailored Expression A2 thin frame cutting plate. I was experimenting with different designs, and so it was already out on my desk and I already had these pieces cut. So I'm just going to use that as a guide for my sentiment, and I'm going to be using the hook, line, and sinker stamp set now from Tailored Expressions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount my sentiment onto my mini MISTI, and I'm going to stamp it with VersaFine Clair, the black ink, and I stamped it onto the base of the MISTI. And then I have the sticky mat that I cut out to a smaller size to fit inside the mini MISTI. I did order some, so we will be getting some mini MISTI size sticky mats and some memory MISTI sticky mats. But in the meantime, I just cut down an extra mat. And what I'm doing is I'm centering the one of the frames around it so that it's centered, and then I'll pop in where I'm going to stamp my sentiment, and then that way it's perfectly centered onto the little piece of what do you call it? Some little piece of cardstock. So now I'm just going to add some icicle embossing powder, and then I'm going to just heat set that. Because it's such a small piece, I'm using tweezers to hold it so that I don't burn my fingers. And once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and put my card together. So I'm going to just place it where I think I want it to go. I'm going to cut out some more of these little fish. It's just called fishes. And I'm going to place them strategically onto the background just to cover up some of the other fish to add some interest. The card does look really muted. I tried this like with the white cardstock, and I just didn't like the way that it looked with white cardstock. So if you want to give it a try and then let me know which one you prefer, just add it in the comments. Right now I'm just going to line up my sentiment with my T ruler, and I'm just going to add some adhesive to the back and line it up with my T-square ruler. I do like the fact that the ruler is flat. I know some people don't like that feature, but I really prefer it flat than to have this big, wide T part that keeps it from, like when you want to use your pencil or cutting blade, keeps it from making contact with the paper. So I kind of prefer it like that. Now I am adding some clear Wink Stella to my fish just so that they don't look so drab next to the glitter tiny fish. And then it kind of adds a little more color to the Distress Oxide. So you do want to be careful that you don't bleed the color, or that the nib of your brush, that it doesn't pick up color and add it to where it doesn't need to go. So when you change colors, just kind of like blot it a little bit just to get that color off before you go to a different area. So now that everything's been adhered, I'm going to mount it to some cardstock, and I'm using Gina K tomato soup cardstock, and I'm just going to be adding some foam tape to the back of it. Now when I add sticky foam to the back, I like to add some to the middle so it doesn't bow down, and then I only remove the center one, and then that way I can center it onto my cardstock, and then if I mess up, I don't rip apart my card when I go to adjust it. Then I kind of just go underneath and I just pull the backing off the rest of the foam, and now it's perfect. I wanted to add some googly eyes to the fish, and I've had these googly eyes for the longest time. I want to say that I probably got them at Joann Fabrics, but I'll try to link some in the description just for some online purchasing. But I'm going to just remove the little sticky off the back of the little eyeball and just place it onto the fish. And that about finishes up my card. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this card. Let me know if you make this card too. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button. Have a great day.